Cool. I want to start with a very, very basic question. Every movie starts with an idea, or I guess in the case of Garrett's, an inspiration. What led you to this story in particular?
Sure, let's just go down right in a row. The idea initially came in 2018 when one of my friends, an actor, because I've been making movies with the same two actors for about a decade, and one of them said, "You should write a romance for me," and I said, "Okay," and I started writing it in 2018. I did the theater. I can do this. Okay. And so I started writing it in 2018, actually. I was single at the time. I am not single anymore. So that definitely influenced some of the themes. But yeah, so it was for my friends who, without them, I would not be making any movies at all. And just, to express something, I think. So how about I do? Sure. There you go.
My inspiration was actually seeing the article in the film, just in the paper, and thinking this guy, seems like an interesting guy. The starting point for a lot of my films is just maybe I could make an interesting 5-minute documentary about this person who lives near me, and it always kind of ends up being a lot, a bigger project. And so I ended up filming with him for maybe 2 years on and off. There was a lot that I cut out, a lot of subplots. Sadly, he had a friend who dressed up like the Joker, and they would go to car shows, but then they'd had an actual falling out, and so they were like actual enemies. And I tried to get the Joker in the film for like a year. I was messaging him on Facebook, having these conversations with him, and then he was finally like, "Okay, I'll do it. You can come, interview me." And the morning of, I was like setting up the time. And he was like, "Man, I was looking at your profile. You have like 200 followers on Instagram. I have 10,000. Like, why would I bother with you?" And so I was like, "Okay, man." So yeah. The joke's always on you.
Yeah, I made this. I shot the live action stuff and wrote this about 3 years ago. And I was like a year out from having had top surgery, and there's like whole Facebook groups like dedicated to like top surgery recovery, and I'd just like never seen a movie about that before. And I was also trying to get back to making something that felt authentic after doing college and learning like, oh, like this is the type of movie I have to make where like someone makes actions and those actions impact the world. And I was like, what if I know it's so top centric, but I was like just trying to like get back to something that felt like my authentic voice.
Thank you, everyone. Let's. So this is the Vermont Shorts block. You're all locally based filmmakers. How did Vermont make an impact on your film, whether it be inspiration, your collaborators, landscape, people that you have to interact with just in the process of making a movie, and resources or lack thereof?
Yeah. So actually, Vermont's important to it because for a long time I was planning on moving to Los Angeles because I was like, I want to make movies, and that's where you make movies. So, but I decided that I actually would prefer to stay in Vermont and make movies here because it felt like welcoming. It also, there's, like if you try to film in someone's house in LA, they'd be like, excellent, that'll be $1,000 for the first day. But in Vermont, they're like, that's awesome, what do you need? So, like there's 2 restaurants in the movie. One of them doesn't exist anymore, but when they both did exist, they just were like, yeah, come on down, hang out in our pizza restaurant. So I think the way that I feel supported is just, I don't know, I felt supported by the people who I could reach out to. So like you saw in the last film there, it's just there's a lot of community here, and I really appreciate that. So
I think Vermont has the highest per capita of like interesting people, of anywhere. So for me, it's like really easy to find subjects. I'm working on 5 films currently, just within people that live within 50 miles of me. So it's entirely integral to the work that I do.
I feel like kind of the central thesis of this film is that like humanity and nature and queerness are inseparable. And I think we sometimes think of really rural places like Vermont as like not having or like being the antithesis of queerness. And I kind of wanted to push against that a little bit. I like the woods, and yeah, all the people that were in this movie and like helped with it were just like people who live around. I met like Zay and Leo at the skate park, the people who are in this, but yeah.
To kind of build off Cedar's point, much of the Vermont experience and the Vermont identity is sort of this balance between large swaths of places that feel very isolating, and then also the hunker and hyper focus on community and community building. What's interesting is all your films have this sort of central character that feels really out of place in the world, and I'm wondering if that theme resonates or how that may have affected your film or your perspective of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole idea of the Kelsey was that he doesn't kind of know where to be, and I play literally an alien from outer space. So, yeah. So, by the way, I'm the pirate. I just saw Sean go. Yeah, no, I don't put it in any marketing materials at all, not even in the credits. So, yeah, and I feel like, like to some degree, and maybe it's, people who make art, or just you always feel like an outsider to some degree, I think, and trying to make movies is a great way to work through the feelings that not only you have, but hopefully other people do, because I always like Roger Ebert's quote that movies are an empathy machine. So the idea that making films like the ones you've described, hopefully we can help kind of make an experience feel a little less isolating, which was my hope with the pirate giving the pep talk at the end of the movie. But anyway.
Yeah, Jesse's lived in Bennington his whole life. He has a huge extended family in Bennington, and he is definitely, a bit of an outcast. Kind of at the end of the film when we see him, he's kind of, called in every favor he can. He kind of has, he has nowhere to go. It's not something everyone always is wondering about is how is he doing now? He's doing a lot better. He's in an apartment. He has a job. But he's still kind of caught in this cycle of, and this is what I identify with the most with him, of like, he has this insane passion that he wants to dress like Batman, and he wants to like spend all of his time working on his costume, working on his car, and it really kills him that he doesn't have the coolest Batmobile. So just like a couple of days ago, he was messaging me and was like, I gotta like upgrade my Batmobile. But I don't have enough money. And I was like, man, like a year ago, you were like living in a camper that a tree fell on, and now like you have a home for your child, and things are a little more like, just take it one step at a time. Like you'll get there, but like just be happy for what how far you've come in the past year. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, I guess as I was making this, I was thinking about kind of the dynamics of care and isolation, and people who recover from things like surgeries, and without like a ton of support, which was not the case for me, but in some ways a little bit was, because it was during COVID and during lockdown. So I had my family around me, I had my partner around me, but I feel like it put a lot of work onto those people. And I was like, oh, if they had been working, like this might not have worked out, like if people had full-time situations. And that was kind of, I think, where the isolation idea came from. In Vermont being kind of rurally isolated, it just kind of worked out. But I think the real cool outsider Easter egg in this movie is the book in it, the Psychic Bible. A lot of people just think it's like the normal Bible, and it's not. Like it's like a 1970s, 80s mysticism book written by this really cool artist, Genesis P. Orridge from Throbbing Gristle and Psychic TV, and they're like like them and their partner did a thing where they just like got more and more surgeries until they looked the same. And like I just like heard about this when I was like 16 years old and just like latched onto it. I was like, that is for me. You are the guy that I am obsessed with now. And if you haven't heard of those bands, you should just go look up their whole life. It's like the performance art piece that just like lives inside of me.
Getting this down pat.
Absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work. Every film presents its new challenges and opportunities, especially these are films that were made on small scales with minimal or no crew. Was there anything that happened during the making of this film that was different than your previous experiences, or a particular challenge that came up with this film, say trying to get permission to film a child's birthday party or running around in superhero costumes? That applies to two of them. Is there anything you learned making from this film that was different than previous experiences?
Yeah, superhero costumes aren't fun in July. Joking aside, though, I mean, initially we thought we could shoot it in 3 days. We could not. So we had to do pickup shots, switched cameras. I picked up as the cinematographer. But, you know, I think we just tried to kind of keep going with it. And I think with small film, most of the key is just persistence. You know what I mean? So, like, now that I think about it, if I really thought about it, I could probably be like, oh, some really challenge. All I can think about is the one time I forgot the eye patch. And I was like, do I digitally add an eye patch? And then I'm like, I can't add a digital eye patch. So I went back about a month before we ended up finishing it, and I shot one single shot of me with an eye patch. You can notice if you pay attention which one it is. But yeah. Truth be told, at that point, I couldn't remember which side it was on before I do the thing where I move it in that final scene with me. So, and I flipped it. Oh my God, yeah. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, this was an incredibly challenging film to make for a lot of reasons. The kid's birthday party was easy. Jesse set that up, and I don't think he did a very good job explaining of what I was doing, because everyone thought I was like his hype crew. And like towards the end, someone was like, so you work for him? And I was like, no, I'm making a documentary about him. And they were like, oh, interesting. And, you know, whatever. Yeah, I was, you know, very much involved with his life and keeping up with him. And, you know, he's an open book on Facebook. So I spent a lot of time on Facebook just being like, okay, what's Jesse up to now? And then the whole last scene, the whole reason I was there is I went there to film a GoFundMe video for him to try and raise money. He didn't end up using the video I made. He ended up making his own GoFundMe video that was all about his car. And I was the only one that gave him any money because people were just like, man, like you're homeless. Why are you trying to repaint your car right now? But that whole summer where he was living in campgrounds, I was continually trying to get him to, you know, take advantage of Vermont's motel voucher program, you know, to get into a motel. And he absolutely did not want to do that. He had done that in the past, and I think it was a bad experience. He was worried about his pets. So then finally when the tree fell, at that point, I thought he was like literally sleeping on the street with his family. So when I went there, I was like, you have to, like, I got in touch on his behalf with someone. I was like, you have to call this person. And he was like, no, I got baptized instead. I was like, oh, okay. So then he was living in that house for a while. It was a bad situation. And finally he was like, I can't do this anymore. And he got a motel room, and he was there for a little bit. And that allowed him to save a little money and eventually get an apartment. So I just want to mention that because, you know, for like the 50th time, our very friendly governor is trying to shut down the motel program currently and kick like 600 families out onto the street. And sort of the subtext is always, these are out-of-staters coming to, you know, take advantage of, you know, the generous, you know, Vermont resources. And really it's, you know, people with kids. It's, you know, think of his daughters, you know, who's going to suffer because this program's being shut down. So it was a very hard film to make.
Yeah. So I had not done a ton of animation before I made this, and animating with cyanotype was just like something I came up with and was like pretty sure I could do, enough so that I got Vermont Public to give me a grant, and I was like, and it's gonna be great. And like the way that I had kind of envisioned it was like, oh, it's gonna be like a spell, like it's gonna be something that I spend a lot of time on, and the point is it's meticulous and it takes a while. and like I'm gonna have to develop all of these outside in the sun. And what happened that year, like a few years ago, was it was like that summer where there were like three sunny weekends, like total, and there was like massive flooding, and it was like, and I didn't really have any studio space, so I was just like doing it like secretly in the basement of the Briggs Opera House that is where my job is, and then I was like taking these big frames of like things out onto like the back parking lot where like the like people at the restaurant I just quit were like on their smoke breaks, like, you should come back and work in the kitchen. And I was like, no, I'm following my dreams. This is what the dreams look like. And yeah, besides that, I think the biggest challenge was I did not know like enough cis men to be in that like lake scene. So like Jordan found like our cinematographer, who was lovely, found like someone from like their all gender frat, and we're like, okay, yes, this person works. And then like one of the people jumping into the water is me from like behind, and then like that the like really like ripped person that you see there was like a random Dartmouth med student who like I haven't been able to find since. But like I like went up to him and I was like, can I film you without your shirt on? And he was like, yeah, sure. Which I feel like is not a response you would get from someone in LA. So blessing of Vermont.
Thank you all. I'm going to pass it off to audience questions, and then, you know, folks, just shout out your question for the purpose of the recording and to help amplify people. I'll repeat your question. So is there any questions for the filmmakers in the audience? Come on. Yes, please. So the for folks in the back, the question was related to mild oaths, the moment in the film where Garrett, while interviewing Jesse, reveals there's an added layer to the relationship with the chief that even Jesse wasn't aware of.
Yeah, that was a part that I was kind of unsure if it was warranted including. Ultimately, I kind of felt like so much of Jesse was like this inverted version of the real Batman, you know? And I think his relationship with the police was really interesting to me in that respect. But mostly I just like, I was really curious about that myself because, you know, it was my interaction with the police chief was really bizarre, and he wouldn't elaborate. And, you know, like I said, I talked to this journalist who had done the story, and they had the same experience where, you know, this police chief was like, you know, you can't run this puff piece on him that makes him look good because, you know, people are going to get mad. And then he did a whole background check and really spent a lot of time and was like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. And, you know, I just felt like you know, there was so much more going on in his life that I didn't include. And I wanted to sort of reference that in the film, that, you know, like his life, there was just a lot more going on. And I felt like that warranted that.
Anyone else? Yes, you were there.
So I was curious. I'm sorry. On the left, your name again? Yeah.
Sam.
Sam. So sorry.
No, you're all good.
I also can't remember shit. No, I was curious if like I like writing scripts and stuff too, and storytelling, and I was really curious as to something that I found very interesting in your movie was how so many romance, like you're asked to make a romance, so many romances, there's like an issue or somebody like denies the other person, and the other person will like really fight to get them back, and maybe it's a happy ending and they get them back and everyone's happy or whatever. But I really like that, like in your movie, it was kind of more like, don't chase after somebody who like kind of turned you down. Like there's somebody who will love you for who you are. And I was curious if you kind of knew that going in, or if you kind of like originally maybe they would end up together, but then you found that the script was going somewhere else, that kind of stuff, you know?
So for folks in the back, the question was about the emotional dynamics of the characters in We Could Be Nemesis between the conductor and Captain Astonishing, and then I forget Haley's character's name, something the Shadow.
It's okay. Firstly, I'm really appreciative you got that takeaway from it. So yeah, my partner mostly reads romance novels all the time, so I spend a lot of time in the romance mindset. But I think the thing that always I thought was more important in a story like this is about characters growing, and I find that a lot of times, in the romance stories, it is the payoff is their coupling, but I did want to do it. So the payoff was that as much as we want them to be together, it's better for them to acknowledge that they're not meant to be together, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that Kelsey needed to grow in terms of that he's not inherently flawed because he hasn't found someone yet. And Astonish is clearly dealing with some internal debates about who he is. But that was the hope with the last shot, was to get across what you're saying, is that he doesn't interrupt them because he's like, I acknowledge that, sometimes we do grow apart, but it doesn't mean it's always a bad thing. So yeah, that was absolutely in the intent. So I'm very glad that worked. That worked. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, you're right there.
We talk a lot about like obstacles, and we've talked about like what was the hardest part or the biggest challenge to making a film. But I'm curious, particularly somewhere in Vermont, where the culture of making films feels different and better. Like I love that you work with the same collaborators. Like I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could like share like what was the silliest moment on set, or like the moment that made you be like, ah, yes, this is why I like make the movies. Like this is the what was that moment?
A fantastic question for those in the back and for the recording. The question was about Vermont engaging with its artists, and obviously there's obstacles to everything, but there's also things that have joy in them and some experience. What's the term? Every rose has a thorn and a petal, something like that. What was the best part about making your movie?
Yeah, I was singing the Seal song. Okay. The best part about making my movie is I want to reiterate. So I started working with Josh and Drew. Drew is sitting right there, by the way. Captain Astonish is right there. We've been shooting movies since 2013, including a web series that we did for 10 plus years. So if there's one, frankly, we're incredibly silly all the time. So in talk about silliest moments, I do want you to know I was on the Burlington waterfront dressed like that. So that felt incredibly silly. But the greatest joy is just that I'm still working with these people and they want to do things with me. Like I can't emphasize enough that the beauty of doing film is just spending time with people you care about. And that's, I teach film actually and that's why I want to teach it, because just, telling folks that you can come together and make something is the best experience as possible. With that said, my gaffer so did not believe that the Kinko's had turned into a FedEx. The silliest moment is when we had to pause the entire shoot so he could call FedEx and confirm they were still Kinko's. He asked them 3 times. And on the 3rd time, they said, well, we were a Kinko's. And he said, okay, thank you, and hung up. So the gaffer demanding that they become Kinko's was the silliest, but the greatest joy was just working with my friends. Thank you.
The silliest moment for me was driving to the birthday party. And, I get car sick really easily. And I for some reason lately I'm making a lot of documentaries that involve men driving around in their cars. Like this is like part of a series basically, and so I'm just like constantly about to throw up. But that was the worst because it's a tiny car. He's driving fast. He has the mask on, and it's like you can't hear anything. How do you see what you're doing? But anyway, we're driving there, and he's like. We were driving from Bennington to Saratoga, and he's like, we got to make a little detour. I'm going to go a different route. And I was like, I don't know how to get to Saratoga. You can go any route you want. And he's like, we're just going to make a little detour. And I was like, okay. And then he mentioned it like 3 more times. And I was like, where are we going? And so finally I was like, Jesse, what's this detour? And he's like, we got to go to the Bat Cave. And I was like, what does that mean? And then we pull into literally an abandoned factory where you would take someone to kill them. And I was like, how good do I know this guy? Like his wife and daughter were in the backseat, so I didn't really think he was going to kill me, but I was like, this is bizarre. He pulls around back and gets out, and he's like, this is my storage unit where I keep all my Batman toys. And they went into a storage unit and like got a big bucket of toys to bring to the birthday party. And I was like, now this is a twist. You know, like I really thought I was going to get offed. And instead he's like, you know, bringing toys for kids. So yeah, that was pretty silly.
Besides accosting like a Dartmouth med student, Jordan, you were there. Do you remember anything?
That was fun. I did ask that man if I could put his nipples.
He had great nibbles.
Thank you, everyone. Any other questions as we start to wrap up? Yes, you and the. For folks who couldn't hear, the question was related to Cedar O'Dowd's film. I have something to get off of my chest. The blend of filmmaking styles, part narrative, part documentary, part animation.
So yeah, thank you for this question. I think a lot of it, the way it looks like why it looks like a documentary and it's not like the most gaffed thing, is because I did have pretty much just one day to shoot because I was asking folks to help me for some money, but not a ton of money. My initial budget was my grandma's life insurance money, which was $600. Thank you, executive producer Roberta O'Dowd. Really came through, but no, I love her. So to kind of make up for that, I really prioritize performance and sound, sometimes over picture, because I think those are the things that, like, if you don't have a lot of time and you don't have, you know, professional actors, there's kind of a way to, I guess, I was like pretty lucky to meet Leo and Zay, who were just like friends of mine and had pretty much this experience like very recently. And I remember someone who had worked with Eliza Hittman, the director of Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, was like telling me about her rehearsal process, where she just had like the actors just journal in a room together and be vulnerable with each other. And these two already had that connection, but our rehearsal was pretty much just getting them to like look at each other and answer questions, getting them to get used to listening, getting them to get comfortable with in front of a camera. That, and like if you're not working with professional actors, shoot them from like as far away as you can get away with. Some of those bathroom scenes were like a little cramped, but like when someone is like, I'm not used to a camera in my face, and then a camera's like right here, they're not gonna give the best performance if it's, or as much so as if it's like very far away. And yeah, that's kind of how that all happened. I have had people mistake it for a documentary, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then someone else said the acting reminded them of Degrassi, so, you know, you win some, you lose some.
That's a compliment.
I think so.
No, we're good. Thank you. Thank you all. I think we have time for one last question. If anyone has, come on, Sean. You're close enough.
The worst possible question. What's next?
Plug yourself.
Cool. So I have 2 features that are written and set and entirely in Vermont. So hopefully those would be producible if anybody wants to help. Or I actually wrote a short fantasy film set up at Hubbard Tower in Montpelier, and we recently got permission to go up there and shoot that. So hopefully doing one of the fantasy short film or the 2 Vermont features. I would be happy to send anybody the script who wants to read it. But anyway, it's just nice to be here now. So thank you.
I have, I already mentioned, I have like 5 movies I'm working on. So just, all kind of along these lines where, someone who I find interesting, who I just kind of follow over the course of a long time. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with Brattleboro, what's going on in Brattleboro, but okay, that's probably for the best. Anyway, yeah.
Ooh. Now I really want to know.
I'll tell you after.
Okay. My cinematographer on this project, who is also like my work spouse and their real spouse, and I have been writing a feature comedy that's very different than this, that is kind of inspired by trying to find something for our Rocky Horror Shadowcast to do and be in, because we know all these, like, I think my friends are the funniest people in the world, and I want to. Yeah, I feel like enough people owe me favors at this point that it's time to cash in on some of those. That, and I think I'm going to start making some experimental animation about herpes that might do more cyanotype and watercolor. And yeah, sorry, I ramble so much.
One final round of applause for our filmmakers, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for attending Green Mountain Film Festival. Thank you all for your films.